Hey everybody, my name's Lukey Boland reporting for EPWPerth.com, and this is the evolution of evolution. We are heading towards the 8th ever Explosive Pro Wrestling Evolution, and it has always been a landmark event in Perth Wrestling. But how did we get here to the 8th one? Well, let's take a look back all the way to the beginning to Evolution 2002, held at the Wanneroo Civic Centre, known as the birthplace of Explosive Pro Wrestling. This was a big show featuring matches like the Slick Rick Challenge, with Damien Kross making his debut against FN Carnage, Tyler Jacobs. Now this was a big match which saw Slick Rick Sanders get pile driven onto a steel chair, and we saw him leave Explosive Pro Wrestling for the first time. And then of course, who could forget the classic main event of Davis Storm and Jimmy Payne to decide the very first ever EPW champion, where we saw Davis Storm get his hand raised in victory in what was an epic battle. Next up, let's take a look back to Evolution 2003, which was the very first time that EPW held Evolution over 2 consecutive nights. This event was held at the Margaret Cockman Pavilion in Wanneroo, and it saw the debut of the Explosive Pro Wrestling Tag Team titles. We saw 4 big teams battling it out to get these belts for the very first time. The team of the Uprising, the Brat Pack, Brat Western and Justin Sane coming together for the very first time as the Serial Thrillers, and Davis Storm and Jimmy Payne. This event also saw the debut of the American Nightmare, Brock Freeman. Also facing each other for the very first time in singles action, Shane Haste and Bobby Marshall, and of course we know the history of their rivalry. But this event was all about the tag team titles, and it all came down to the Brat Pack versus Davis Storm and Jimmy Payne. And in what was a bit of an upset, the Brat Pack walked away the victors of that match and earned their place in the EPW history books as the very first EPW Tag Team Champions. Now fast forward 12 months to Evolution 2004, which saw the return of South Australia's Havok as he took on in singles action Justin Sane in what was, well, the word brutal springs to mind. And speaking of South Australians, also present at that event was Jag, who took on Mikey Nicholls in a match that, well, ended very unfortunately for Mikey Nicholls as he landed on his head and was unable to continue to wrestle. And the main event of Evolution Night 1 saw a rumble where 4 winners went on to face each other on Night 2. So the next night in action it was Jag, Havok, Davis Storm and Brad West battling it out to see who would become the #1 contender for the EPW title. Davis Storm had his hand raised in victory and went on to take on the EPW champion. Also in action on Night 2, Rave and the Brat Pack took on Psychofett, Shane Haste and Carl Electrifying as we saw Awesome Inc. teaming up for the very first time. But of course, who could forget the main event from Evolution Night 2 2004, the classic street fight between Lobo and FN Carnage. This match saw thumbtacks, guardrails, whatever wasn't nailed down was used as a weapon. It was a match that basically earned FN Carnage respect, not only in EPW, but all around Australia. And the next stop on our Evolution of Evolution came in 2005 as EPW did its very last show from the Margaret Cockman Pavilion in Wanneroo. This was a big event as we saw a visitor in the form of multiple gold logie winner, one of the biggest stars in all of Australian television, Rove McManus, made his presence felt. It all culminated during a match between Davis Storm and Psychofett. Rove McManus, in front of a very vocal crowd, showed his feelings about Explosive Pro Wrestling.
This is fucking awesome.
Also in action on this night was an EPW tag team match between GST and Jamie Jurah and Devlin Reeves, which, well, didn't work out as Jamie had hoped, as Devlin Reeves, well, chopped him until he was a bloody mess. And Evolution Night 1 culminated in a rumble which was taken out by Richter, who earned his spot as the #1 contender for the EPW title, able to cash in that title shot anytime he wanted. fast forward to night 2 of Evolution 2005, where GST went head to head with Awesome Inc. in a match with more than a few highlights. And then of course the end of night 2 of Evolution 2005 saw Mikey Nicholls retain his EPW Championship belt in a match against Jag, Havok and Jimmy Payne. But just as Mikey thought he was going to sell his way to reawakening as the EPW Champion, out came Richter, who cashed in the #1 contender spot he had and chokeslammed Mikey through a table for the victory.